Hey there, I'm Sandy Reese, Chief Encouragement Officer here at Get Fully Funded, where we help small nonprofits learn how to raise the money they need to fully fund their mission. I'm here to help you learn how to master the art and science of fundraising, and I've got a great tip for you in just a moment. But before we get to that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that the next time we post a really great tip like this one, you're among the first to know. Okay, on to this week's tip.
All right, this week's tip is all about storytelling. If you read our blog, you know that we posted an outline of a way that you can share a story just yesterday. You'll find that at getfullyfunded.com/blog, along with hundreds of other articles that are super helpful. But yesterday we were talking about storytelling, and one of the reasons that we decided to write about that is because we've been working with a lot of clients lately, trying to help them take the real life stories of the work that they're doing and putting it into a format that actually gets people to respond, right? So I've got 4 tips for you today, and you may want to grab a pen and write these down. When you're telling a story, you need to think about what you want people to do after reading or hearing that story. So if you want people to give, then you need to tell the story with a fundraising call to action in mind. And that means we want to tell the story with a lot of emotion. Honestly, I can't really think of anything. Well, there might be some reasons. Maybe if you're telling a story for research purposes or, I don't know, something else. But most of the time, if you're working with fundraising, marketing, communications, your story needs to have an emotional pull to it. Okay? So you have to tell your story in a way that's more than a timeline. See, this is how we're all used to telling stories. There's a reason why fairy tales start with once upon a time. We go all the way back to the beginning and we say, well, this happened first, and then this happened, and then this happened, and we walk all the way through. And we think that that's a story. Well, it might be, but it's probably not. So first of all, know that your story is more than just a timeline. There's got to be, and this is tip number 2, there's got to be a problem, a challenge, or a villain. I love Donald Miller's story brand formula. I think I actually have his book right here. I'm not going to grab it because it'll knock everything over on my desk. But he tells a storytelling, he shares a storytelling formula that works really well. And he says there's always a villain in the story. So let's say that you work with, well, let me use Habitat for Humanity for an example. This will be a good one. So Habitat, as you know, builds simple, decent, affordable homes for families who otherwise are not going to be able to afford them. So let's say you've got a homeowner, I'm going to call her Teresa, and you could say, well, you know, this is Teresa's story. She was in this situation. She really wants a house. Please help us. We can tell the story chronologically, but there may be some opportunities where we're missing out. We need to add the emotion in. And one of the ways we can do that is by talking about a challenge that Teresa faces that most people who want a home have faced. Okay, so the challenge is Teresa wants a home. Now, is that enough for somebody to say, wow, let me get my credit card? Probably not. Just because she wants a home is not enough. So we have to talk about, we have to put the emotion into it about what is the challenge that's driving her to that. Now, having worked with Habitat and having sat on the board of my local Habitat, I can tell you that most families who are seeking a simple, decent, affordable home are living in very terrible situations. Our homeowners came to us because they were living in trailers with holes in the bathroom floor, and they were living in apartments in neighborhoods where there was gunfire every night, or they were living in a house with mold in the ceiling. There were all kinds of issues, but they were unsafe and unhealthy. So that's what we have to talk about. Did you see how I just described those things? And you probably imagined each of those situations in your head. Did you see that? I snuck that one in on you, didn't I? That's what you have to do when you're telling stories. You've got to paint that picture of the challenge and how hard it is. So if we want to take it further, you can say, well, let me tell you about Teresa. She lives with her 2 young sons in a neighborhood where gunfire happens very commonly. And it causes them all to have low-level anxiety all the time, to the point that they struggle to sleep at night. And you can imagine what problems that causes. The boys don't sleep at night, so they're grumpy during the day. They're not doing well at school, which means that she's frustrated because she really wants them to do well in school so they can go to college because she never had the chance to. Okay, now you see how now we're picking up some steam in this story. We're starting to tell even more, and we're painting a picture. And different people who read or hear this story are going to go, oh yeah, I've been in situations where I didn't sleep at night or my kids didn't sleep, and oh yeah, that's a problem. That's a real problem. And yeah, I can relate to, I really want my kids to do well in school and want them to have more than I had. So this leads me to point number 3, which is you need to use some universal emotions and universal situations in your story. The more you can tell something that your reader or listener immediately understands and relates to, the better. So what are some universal situations or universal emotions? Well, think about it. Fear. We all have things that we're afraid of. Like right now in the land of COVID-19, a lot of people are worried about the virus. They're worried about catching it. They're worried about protecting their loved ones. So there's some fear. In a situation like Habitat, a family like Teresa's may be just trying to like make sure that the next generation has a better situation than what her generation had. So that can be a common situation. Or we want the best for our children, right? All of us do that. Or we want to live in a home that we can be proud of. We want to be able to hang our grandma's picture on the wall and put the nail in the wall and not worry about what the landlord is going to say. We want to have the opportunity to make our flowers look really pretty out front in front of our yard. So we all have these universal emotions. Some of them are what we might consider more negative. So it's fear and worry and guilt and shame and doubt, those kind of things. Or it might be more positive where we have dreams and desires and we're yearning for something and there's something we really want, but there's something standing in our way. Okay, is this making sense? You see how that works? And the universal situations. The more you can use those universal situations, the more you can use something that people can relate to, the better. So we're actually working on a project right now with an animal shelter where we're writing some stories for them. And even with animals, you can still pull in relatable emotions. So we're talking about a cat. We're writing a story about a barn cat. And we talk about how this cat probably felt abandoned, or he felt like, okay, immediately did anybody go like, oh yeah, I've felt abandoned before, right? We all have. So this cat who's been mistreated, people have let him down, he's probably been hurt, he doesn't want to be touched, people have turned their back on him, they've misjudged him. See, these are all feelings that, even though we're talking about a cat, these are things that individuals can go, oh, I totally relate to that. I know what that feels like to be abandoned. I know what that feels like to be misjudged. I know what that feels like to be overlooked or left out. So anytime you can start to help people identify with those emotions or even feel those emotions, they're going to be more likely to read or listen to your whole story, and they're going to be more likely to take the action that you want them to take. Okay, so you with me so far? All right, that was tip number 3, is use the universal emotions. The last tip that I have for you, number 4, is your nonprofit is almost never the star of the story. It's not about you. It's not about your programs. It's not about your facility. It's what your programs and your facility make possible. You see, nonprofits really only exist to do one thing, and that's to make a change in the world. You should only ever fundraise to make a change in the world. You should never ask people to give just so you can meet an arbitrary goal, or so you can keep the lights on, or so you can make your budget. It's not about that. It's not about any of that. Your nonprofit exists to change lives, to save lives, to protect the environment, to protect animals. Your nonprofit exists to make a difference. So be sure that you're telling the story about Teresa, about this one woman who is longing for a home of her own and she's willing to do what it takes to keep her family safe. Or this barn cat who needs a safe place. He needs a place so he can be warm and dry and be able to eat regularly and be looked after. Your nonprofit is not the star. Your nonprofit should be one little sentence that after you tell the story about Teresa, then you say, and through our homeowner education program, we were able to get Teresa started, and now she's working her sweat equity hours, and now she's learning how to be a good homeowner. Very, very soon, she'll be receiving the keys to her brand new home, built lovingly by volunteers from the community. Okay, see how that works? It's really important to be able to tell your story well. When you can do that, you're going to see donations go up. This is a good thing. You're going to see volunteerism go up. This is a good thing. You're going to see more signups for your email newsletter list and more followers on social media. Everything gets better when you get really good at telling stories. Now, one final thing. Sometimes things can be taught and sometimes things can be caught. So what I want you to do is start really paying attention to good stories. Find organizations that are telling stories that you read them and you go, oh gosh, that just grabbed me by the heartstrings. When you notice that, I want you to stop and go, okay, what exactly grabbed me about that story? I want you to notice. Was it the words? Was it an emotion they evoked? Was it the problem, challenge, or villain? What happened in that story that caused you to say, whoa, that was strong? Because when you start to notice that, you will start to catch on and see, just from watching how other people are telling their stories, you will start to tell better stories too. I have found for myself, I did not start out in any of this good at any of it. There's a reason that old phrase comes up over and over, and that is that practice makes perfect. Well, I don't know that practice makes perfect, but practice will definitely increase your skill and make you better at it. The more that I write, the more stories that I tell, the better I get at it in the end. I also pay really close attention to how people respond. And when I see people really lasering in to a story, if they are leaning in, if they're responding, if we tell a story for a client, we see all kinds of donations come in, then I'm like, okay, that worked. We need to dissect it, see why it worked, do it again so that we can help them raise more money, because that's what we're here for. Okay, let's open it up. Let me check the Q&A and see what's on your mind. If there's anything that you want to ask about, please go ahead and ask. So while you're typing that in, let me also remind you that we have coming up our annual Inspired Fundraising Retreat. It's normally in person, normally a couple of days, and it is a ton of fun. People walk away all jazzed up and excited and recharged and full of ideas and ready to go. And of course, this year, because COVID, it's going to be a virtual retreat. It's coming up September 17th and 18th. And I thought, since we are in the world of everything happening online, we're going to focus all the content on virtual fundraising. So we're going to talk about telling stories in an email and using video and what a successful Facebook fundraiser looks like, and the difference between a fundraiser and a campaign online, and how to make the most of giving days like Giving Tuesday. So this is all going to happen in these 2 days. I'm going to give you some very practical ideas. I've got some great examples, and we're going to peel back on some of those examples and look at what did it take to put those together. You don't want to miss it. You can get early bird pricing until August 19th, so go over to inspiredfundraisingretreat.com and sign up. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I'd love to see you there. Definitely hop over to getfullyfunded.com/blog. We got a great article this week that'll walk you through the different parts that you want to make sure that you have in your story. And we've got a really awesome sample story on the blog that you don't want to miss. All right, you guys, that is it for now. I will see you next time. Bye.